As the West steps up its demonization of Iran in an attempt to destabilize the country and topple its belligerent regime, the propaganda has reached new levels of absurdity, with claims that the country may have teamed up with Al-Qaeda to launch a joint strike on the London Olympics. Today's The Daily Telegraph reports, security experts said that recent intelligence suggested Iran and Al-Qaeda could attempt to find a common project in Europe, possibly targeting the London Olympics, which opens in July. As well as the credibility of this recent intelligence being impossible to determine, we're not told what it is or where it came from. The warning comes from a private political risk consultancy named Maplecroft, whose business depends on providing solutions to the very risks it claims exist. Their warning is so speculative as to be entirely useless, and it's hard to see how the statement and its subsequent promotion by the mainstream press serve any purpose other than fueling the climate of fear and perpetuating the demonization of Iran. Later in the same article, we even learn that British officials say there had been no new lines of investigation opened into suspected plots involving the two sides, casting serious doubt on Maplecroft's startling claim. If there was any credible evidence to suggest Iran is working with Al-Qaeda to attack the Olympics, then British security agencies would surely have opened a line of investigation into such a serious development. The warning is particularly ironic, as whilst there is no evidence that Iran is working with Al-Qaeda, being Shia and Sunni the two are ideologically divided, there is plenty of evidence of the West's involvement with Islamic terrorists. During last year's NATO war against sovereign Libya, the rebel army, as repeatedly stated by Gaddafi, included fighters connected to Al-Qaeda. In 2004, Britain and the US were even complicit in the abduction, imprisonment and torture of Libya's current military commander, Abdul Hakim Belhaj, believing him to be a terrorist threat to the West. Last year's illegitimate NATO attack on Libya saw Gaddafi betrayed, when his supposed Western allies in the fight against Islamic extremism used those very same extremists to violently force him and his clan from power. The West's relationship with Al-Qaeda has continued with the current attempt to unseat Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Some of the aforementioned Libyan rebels have headed to Syria to join the uprising, and several bombings have been attributed to Al-Qaeda fighters from Iraq, the most recent a twin suicide bombing in the city of Aleppo, which killed innocent civilians. If the West is not actively funding and supporting these Al-Qaeda terrorists, then it is at the very least turning a blind eye to their activities, as the bombings are useful in serving to further destabilize the country and help achieve their goal of toppling Assad. Such close links between the West and militant Islamists are unsurprising, considering that our own security services were behind the original arming, training and financing of the Afghan Mujahideen, who developed into the group now known as Al-Qaeda, beginning in 1979 when the CIA fostered them as a proxy force to keep the Soviets out of Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda literally meant the base, or the database, a computer file containing details of Western intelligence-trained Islamist fighters, a directory of assets in effect, which could be called upon when needed. Whilst the West makes baseless assertions about the supposed links between Al-Qaeda and Iran, in reality it is provably our own governments and security services who are collaborating with Islamic extremists. Our old enemy, violent militant Islamists, are now being used as useful tools in the fight against our new enemy, belligerent autocrats such as Gaddafi and Assad, who the West wish to depose because they stand in the way of their new world order.